market. It's also got a major negative knock-on effect on house owners, as the property tax they're due to pay next year could also spiral. Well, yesterday the Taoiseach nodded to a possible freeze on property taxes, or at least promised to work hard to avoid dramatic hikes in property tax. So is this fair, or a class mistake by the Taoiseach and just a nakedly populist move? Here's Richard Downs.
The property tax was introduced in the dark days of 2013, when the Troika was here and everything was terrible. We paid it, however, reluctantly. And that's where it stayed. As the market recovered and prices rose, a revaluation of properties was due to take place. But Michael Noonan had other ideas.
I will be making a proposal to government to postpone the revaluation date for the local property tax from 2016 to 2019.
There was meant to be a revaluation 2016. The next one is scheduled for 2019. There's some possibility that it might be deferred further, which wouldn't be a good idea.
It's estimated that 80% of homeowners have valued their homes at less than €200,000. If you valued your home at €100,000 in 2013, your tax due is €90. If you said it was worth €200,000, the tax is €315. If valued at €400,000, it's €675 a year. At the very top end, a house valued at €5 million will cost the owner €11,800 a year in tax. Local authorities can vary the charge by 15% either way, and many have chosen to do that. Because the property tax was frozen at 2013 values, some people are saving a fortune. A mansion here in Dublin 4, which cost about $1 million at the depths of the recession, could easily be worth 3 or 4 times that level now, meaning those people are saving thousands of euro a year. And the system is already full of oddities and peculiarities. These new apartments, some of the fanciest in the country, are exempt from property tax until at least 2019. The most expensive, advertised at €6.5 million, should cost €16,000 a year in tax. But they'll cost nothing, unless there's a change.
The longer you defer the thing, the anomalies get more and more. The longer you leave it, the greater the adjustments, and it becomes politically much more difficult to have a revaluation, the greater the interval between one and another. So we need to do it regularly.
So if there is a revaluation in 2019, what are we looking at? Using very conservative estimates, that house prices will have doubled between 2013 and 2019. The €90 bill will rise to €315. And the current €495 bill will go up to €1,215. In London yesterday, the Taoiseach told reporters he would move might and main to make sure there was no sudden hike in property taxes.
The Taoiseach may be concerned that if property is revalued and the rates don't change, that property tax bills will go up very significantly. I understand that concern, but there's no reason why that should happen. Is that if we put in a proper valuation system, you can always change the rate. If, for example, if property values double, you can halve the rate, and people on average pay the same.
Richard Downs reporting there. I'm joined now in studio by Josepha Madigan, Gael TD for Dublin Rathdown, and Karl Deeter from the Irish Mortgage Brokers. First of all, Josepha Madigan, many of your constituents, their properties have risen hugely in recent times. Isn't it only fair that they pay a higher property tax?
No, I wouldn't agree with that, Miriam, at all. In fact, a lot of my constituents, and in other constituencies, of course, throughout the country, they are on fixed incomes, and they are living in properties, for example, where the value mightn't necessarily, be the same as what their income is. So perceptions can be, I suppose, there's an opaqueness there sometimes that people will perceive that somebody has more money than they actually have. And we have to remember, if we go back to when the local property tax was brought in 2010, this was during the Troika time, and there was an £85 billion bailout, effectively. And it was the right thing to do at the time. But what I'm concerned about, and I brought this up in my maiden speech back in April 2016 and again in July of this year, what I'm concerned about is that there's going to be a sudden hike, as the Taoiseach put it yesterday, in 2019, and I want to make sure that there's fairness and reasonableness and an equitable solution there for people,
well, wasn't it
not just in my
fundamentally flawed?
constituency.
It failed to recognise property market as cyclical, and as Richard Downs pointed out there are new bills worth millions and millions. They're exempt since 2013 from property tax.
Yes, and they're going to be exempt up until the 31st of December
Isn't that ludicrous?
2019. Well, at the end of the day, you know, what it has done, there are 3 benefits to local property tax. And by the way, I do accept it in the broad principle terms of it. You know, it has helped to broaden the tax base. It does help with local property services. And there is discretion there with the local authorities to vary the tax rate, you know, up to 15%. But I suppose what the Taoiseach has said yesterday, and it was slightly, I suppose, misconstrued in the media, that in fact what he doesn't want to see is a sudden hike as distinct from any hike.
So it would be a new freeze?
So, yeah, no, well, not necessarily a freeze. Okay. That is one of the options that we could look at, but that's not necessarily what's going to happen. Well, I'm chair of the Budgetary Oversight Committee. I'm hoping post-budget to have in the main experts in this area to come in and to tease out proper solutions that we can look at.
Karl Deeter.
I suppose I would just look at this from the logical position of saying house prices rose, property tax is a tax based on the house price. And if your house price doubled, well then why would your property tax not double? Because if your wages had doubled, your income tax would certainly go up. So it just logically doesn't make sense. And I would just see this as, you know, good old-fashioned electioneering, clientelism and parish pump on a national level. And I find that hard. I mean, I don't want to get into a compassion derby with an elected representative from one of the country's richest constituencies, where the core of the complaint seems to be the massive accrual of unearned wealth in the form of rising property prices.
What about the point, though, Josepha,
I just don't see it as being defensible.
Somebody's house could go up a lot, but their income mightn't have gone up. So they mightn't actually be able to afford to pay the tax, even though they're sitting in this pile that's worth a lot.
There's options out there for deferrals, but let's not forget that what you're really saying is that you think people should be able to accrue huge wealth and not pay their way. And by the way, when you say no to rising property tax, you say no to a host of other things. So Dublin City Council had said that by cutting the full 15%, they said if you just go 10%, that way we can hire more apprentices. You're actually going to make sure that the roads aren't fixed. You're going to make sure that water isn't working worse than it is. I mean, this is a common sense tax.
No, I mean, the principle of the property tax is not something that I would fundamentally disagree with at all. In fact, I think it's vital, and I outlined the reasons for that.
Why would you want it frozen?
And there are deferrals there, as you mentioned, you know, for a couple who is under 25,000 if they earn that, or a single person under 15,000. However, and there's also exemptions as well for people with pirate damage, or, you know, if they have personal insolvency and that kind of thing.
Incredibly valuable houses. But
the value of a property isn't aligned with somebody's income, and there's a lot of people who are asset rich and cash poor, unfortunately. And sorry, the other thing to say, and Karl, you should know this as somebody in the mortgage business. There's an awful lot of people out there who are saddled with enormous mortgage debt, and they simply can't afford to pay this property tax. So really, the reason why we wanted to bring it up, and why I'm very, very much welcoming what the Taoiseach said yesterday, Miriam, is that...
Is it just populism,
No,
though?
it's not populism. I mean, at the end of the day, this was a deal that was an important thing that came in, and it was the right thing to do at the time, but nobody could have foreseen how property prices were going to escalate. There's a 61% rise since 2013 to 2016. If that continues on to 2019, that's going to be difficult for people. So all I'm saying is that we need to look at solutions, and we need to do it now.
It is. This is what Fianna Fáil did in 1977, and it's effective. People fall for it. And you know, you're looking at South Dublin, where average house prices are over €500,000. I mean, if we've got some kind of humanitarian disaster going on with one of the wealthiest constituencies in the country, let's go help them.
It's not their fault that the house prices have gone up. No more than Dublin Bay South, or Leary, or many places around the country. The good thing that the Taoiseach has suggested, Miriam, is that local authorities would have more discretion over varying the tax rate, which is exactly what Dr Thornhill said in his recommendations in his report in 2015. And that's something that I would agree with. For example, in Kerry, they actually increased the property tax by 5%. So each local authority has its own needs. For example, there's things like, you know, burial graveyards, they're maintained, and traffic management and litter. So they do provide a service. So all I'm asking for is reasonableness and fairness, and that we examine this in the meantime.
Look, property tax was designed in your team was in control when we were doing a lot of this, and they had every chance in the world to change it. And all they did is freeze it, and now they want to, you know, freeze it again or do whatever it is to be popular on the day.
It hasn't been suggested
and
at
I
all
understand,
that it should be frozen.
I understand the political need to be popular so that people vote for you and you get their mandate. But just have an honest conversation with the country. If you want to defund things, make sure we have wrecked roads, bad services and all that, call it what it is, because you want to protect incumbent property owners who have massive funds.
I mean, the local property tax brings in about 468 million annually, so
higher.
It's about 1% of the tax revenue.
If our tax was anything like it was internationally, it'd be about 5 times the rate.
There's no difficulty in having a local property tax, but whatever. But we have to have reasonableness and proportionality.
Josepha, Madigan, it's a subject we will be coming back to. Thank you both very much. David.